Hey, everybody, what's going on? This is Scott Garber back in the seat of the Profluent Sports Podcast, where we are highlighting founders, investors, and advisors across the whole sporting landscape. Today, we are excited to welcome our next guest, Brooks Schaden, CEO of Tom's Watch Bar, doing some amazing things as the fan engagement space and sports neighborhood continues to evolve. But it's not my story to tell. So, Brooks, my man, welcome to the show. How are we doing today?
I'm doing great, Scott. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Another beautiful day here in Denver.
Yeah, we were just talking about it, and I have Denver has a soft spot in my heart. There's a lot of really exciting things going on in that budding market, and Brooks, excited to get to know you a little bit and your
Yeah.
journey into the sporting world. And this is going to be a fun conversation where we unpack all kinds of evolutions that are taking place, but the origin story is so important. So give us a little
Yeah.
insight to who is Brooks.
Yeah, a little bit of my background. It's funny. I started most of my career was really more on the finance side. I started off in investment banking and doing mergers and acquisitions and private equity. Started a private equity fund, and then I got involved with kind of the restaurant space. Gosh, it's hard to you lose track of time. 15 years ago or so, I'm with my cousin Rick, who he had started Quiznos, and we started Smashburger. And so built up a few restaurant concepts, and also got involved on the restaurant side or the investment side. And, it was probably 2018, 2019, as we were selling off Smashburger, we just started noticing all of these different tailwinds and trends within the sports industry. And it's funny, you sell a business and you get out of it and say, okay, great, I'm gonna go take a breather and don't want to open another restaurant. And somehow we found our way back into it. But this one was different because we just saw something in sports and the way that people were engaging with sports that was kind of making us scratch our head. And so our first location, it was originally called Tom's Urban, was out in LA Live. And, of course, we're right across the street from crypto.com arena now. Had Lakers, Clippers, and Kings. And so, of course, we were busy with all the fans on their way to the game. They want to come pre-party, get a little lubricated before they go in and watch the game. And what we started noticing, I'll never forget the story. It was Monday Night Football. There was a Lakers game across the street. And there was also, I think it was the 49ers and Seahawks were playing. And normally when this game starts, people paid $500 for the Laker tickets. They want to get in and get their seats and see the game. We noticed that like half the crowd was still staying there because they wanted to see the end of the football game. And it was a little bit of an aha about people are watching more sports. They're watching different things. If you're a fan of the Lakers, you're probably a fan of football as well. And we started realizing, all right, this isn't just about being in the area where the sport people are going to the game. We're here to cater to all of their sports needs. And so, I'm sure we'll talk about this more, but a lot of it we started doing the research on viewership and what people are watching, sports betting, fantasy leagues. People are just watching more sports. They're watching them differently. They're consuming sports different. The content is coming different ways, and said, look, we just want to be at the hub of this. And we want to be about entertainment. We want to be about the sports community. And that's where we really started molding what we were trying to build into Tom's Watch Bar to be just a new way to watch sports. And that's kind of where it came from. And, we can talk lots more about what we're trying to do, but that's really the goal of the business.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's so interesting, to understand who's at the helm of these ships, right? And the tenure and perspective that you bring in. And I think one of the most exciting things in our world is the aperture of sports as it's become a true asset
Yeah.
class. It's not just about what's happening in the arena or in the field, it's all the tertiary opportunities around it. And,
Yeah.
if we look at what the Battery is doing in Atlanta, we're now
Yeah.
taking this sporting experience and then putting lifestyle all the way around it, which seems really
Yeah.
akin to how you guys are building. I want to touch
Yep.
on this because just from a timeline perspective, you talk about 2018, 19, then we go through this period of COVID and, it's almost in the rear view. We know it happened, but it doesn't get talked about. How did you guys sort of navigate that experience being in the restaurant and the IRL space?
Yeah. Yeah. You touched on a few really interesting points there. I mean, at LA Live, I mean, AEG is our landlord. And that was the other big thing we realized in this space is this isn't a traditional tenant landlord relationship. AEG is our partner. And we're there to take care of their fans and enhance the experience for all of the guests that are coming to LA Live to watch games or concerts or whatever else it might be. And that's how we ended up. Our second location is in Las Vegas. We're connected to an MGM property, but we're right next to T-Mobile Arena where the Golden Knights play. And at the time, that wasn't built when we went there, and that was all based on the conversation with AEG saying, "Hey, we're building this arena over there. We want to help build out, do the same thing here. We want to go build out restaurants and entertainment around that." And I can go into several other properties like that, but that's really a big part of our model. Whether it's AEG or we just partner with Oakview Group and the Kraken in Seattle, how do we help engage with fans around the stadiums? And to bring it back to kind of your question about COVID, it was a big eye opener to us that we're about experience, and a lot of restaurants and other entertainment concepts tried to figure out ways to stay in business during COVID. And we quickly realized, you know what, this is about sports community and sports fans getting together. And if you can't get together, it kind of kills the experience. But it was great to work with the teams, the partners like AEG or MGM or some of the casino properties to say, look, we're all going to get through this together. And there's going to be a great resurgence of fans and guests once they're ready to come back out. And that was really one of the ways we were able to get through it, is because we had these great partners that were all about the guests. And, Vegas opened a lot sooner, LA opened a lot later, but it all worked out because we were all in really close communication with the teams, the team owners, the stadium owners, about how are we going to engage with fans as they come back and make it exciting for them. Because as we saw, people came back in waves because they've been so cooped up. They were so excited to come back. And even when they were they couldn't necessarily go to the stadiums because they had they were doing like the tournaments down in Florida, we were able to say, like, great, we'll do like watch parties promoted with you guys at our venue to at least help get the fans back together until they can come back in the arena. So it was really hard, it was really tough to get through, but it was kind of a cool experience in the evolution of our brand about how to work with the teams and those kind of partnerships.
I love the lessons that we're able to extract from it. And I
Yeah.
think it's so important to continue to talk about it because it was just such a milestone that really
Yeah.
pivoted the way that maybe the initial thesis and vision looked, but now you're doubling, tripling down on that guest and fan experience. And we know
Yeah.
that's where the juice really, is worth the squeeze. So Brooks, just for our listeners, let's level set here. Give us a
Yeah.
little insight into what is an experience at Tom's Watch Bar like? What separates you guys? Give us a little peek behind the curtain there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, at its core, it's really all about entertainment and experience. I mean, we obviously sell a lot of food and drinks, and that's what our business is. And I can talk a little bit more about that. But the whole concept was meant to be an entertainment venue for sports fans, because at its core, I really believe that sports is about community. Because that, kind of to your point, you can watch a game at home. You can go buy a 90-inch TV at Costco for not an outrageous price, right? Or you can watch it on their phone and switch around. But people want to come out and be a part of that experience. And so one of our other origin stories was thinking back to, you know, Tom, who's one of our other partners, he went to Michigan State and was telling a story about, gosh, I wanted to go watch the Michigan State game. And everyone's done it before, right? You call the bar, hey, you're going to show the Michigan State game. And it's some bartender that says, yeah, maybe if you come in, we might have it on. But we wanted to take away that experience. We wanted to make it very clear to people, we are going to have every game on every day. All the sports all the time has become kind of our mantra. And not only that, if we're doing it right, we become known as the place to go watch every sport. So you're going to show up and not only going to have the Michigan State game on, but there's probably going to be 100 Michigan State fans there also. And the Michigan game that might be going on as your kind of rival over in the other corner, and they're all there too. And so people want to come out to Tom's because they know it's going to be full of fans and you can be a part of that experience. And so what we tried to design is something that's a little bit different, because people are watching sports different. And so the traditional sports bar that has, kind of the jerseys on the wall and the sticky floors and smells like stale beer, we wanted to bring something modern and fresh, but also to be really careful not to go too far, because sports fans aren't coming looking to have, foie gras and that kind of food. We wanted to bring what if sports fans expect, but bring something better. So we have, burgers and wings and all those things that you might expect from a sports bar, but better versions of that. But then also round it out with great salads. We do an ahi tuna tower, some things like that are a little bit different and a little bit better, a different experience. And it's because we're seeing a wider range of ages, demographics. We are really close to about 50-50 male, female. And so we realized we had to cater to that audience from the consumer perspective. And then everyone can throw up a lot of TVs, but we noticed because of sports betting, fantasy leagues, people are watching multiple sports and lots of different games. And so if you're in Denver on Sunday, you're probably there to watch the Broncos game, but you might have a bet on another game, or your fantasy league quarterback's playing in another game. And so we're really particular about how we curate the screen so that, yeah, you're watching the big feature screen with the Broncos, but make sure you've got clusters of screens everywhere else all over the place and surround you in 360 viewing so that you can see whatever other game that you want to watch. And people are watching more sports. You might be watching the Broncos, but you're also a fan of Real Madrid, and so you want to see the soccer game that's going on. And so we spent a lot of time working on the screens to make sure that you can get that experience. And then just other little things like we don't do booths or banquettes because it tends to separate people. And if you believe sports are about community, we want high tops and loose furniture, and people are kind of hanging out at their table, but they're sort of leaning on one elbow, but talking trash to the next table. And so all of those little decisions we had to make to layer up to try to bring a better experience. And then the last piece I'll touch on is we call them watch parties. So, the bigger games, bigger events, we curate not just the screens and what's going to be on, but also what else is going on. So giveaways and prizes. We bring in DJs because you can have a game and all that's got tons of energy, cuts to commercial, and the energy dies, and everyone you're listening to a Budweiser ad. Well, we have the DJs come in and turn the music up and announce giveaways or whatever else we might be doing. Bring in mascots from the teams, and we do partner with fan clubs, alumni groups. We have several partnerships with different sports teams or leagues, all to try to integrate the whole experience together. Because the teams in the league, they also want to find different ways to engage with their fans, and there's a lot of different things, and I could go on forever. But we want to make sure we're thinking about our business as a fan experience, not just what's the burger that's coming to your table, and how do we wrap that all together to give you something totally different.
No, you hit on so many points there. I think that 360 holistic experience, when I show up, I want to feel like I'm part of something bigger than myself. Is what sports provokes, right? And so
Yeah.
now, if we're able to go ahead and get that in different pockets, I think that community element is like what everyone's trying to solve.
Right.
This is a little more pointed question, but we're seeing it across the sporting landscape. The way my parents consume versus the way Gen Z consumes is very different.
Yeah.
And we're watching these third spaces start to evolve into more communities, whether they're run clubs or they're a little more health and wellness focused. So I'm
Yeah.
curious, as you guys look out into the future, you'll always have that core user, but how are you educating and getting maybe that fringe sport watcher to come into Tom's and participate and sort of feel what this, larger experience is like? We see teams starting to do it in different ways. I'm curious, from your lens, how are you guys growing and evolving the brand?
Yeah, again, we're still relatively new and early, so a lot of it is just building awareness. And all of our early locations, we tend to go by the sports stadiums, and it's great. In Denver here, we're right next to Coors Field where the Rockies play, and so it's great during Rockies games. But what we found more than anything else, it's kind of free marketing. If there's 20,000 people walking by our door on their way into a Rockies game, they stop in for a drink. If you're a Rockies fan, you're probably a Broncos or an Avs or a Nuggets fan, and you walk into our place and go, oh, wow, this is the place to come watch the Nuggets or watch football on Sunday. And so a lot of it is by location and being in areas where we can attract sports fans. The other nice part is, well, marketing's fundamentally changed. And so it's way easier, frankly, to market to sports fans than it is just generally a restaurant or something else like that, because everyone eats. You're just trying to say, hey, my burger's better than somebody else. Here I can find out, you're a hockey fan and I want to communicate, engage with you about your team and the party that we're having that's going to be relevant to you, versus just continuing to blast you with information about come, watch sports with us. And I think that's one of the really going to be one of the really powerful long-term benefits we have, is that as we get bigger, we build this database and this user base of fans that we can now engage with about their specific passion and whatever their specific sport is, and then find out more about you. Like, what, you came in to watch the Avalanche, and so I know you're a hockey fan. What else do you like to watch? Maybe you are a soccer fan, and we start building audiences in these different cohorts. So we're marketing more specifically towards what you want, because that's the way I think people want to consume these days. You don't want to just constantly hit with ads and outreach about buy this, buy this, buy this. We're trying to talk to you, engage with you about what your passion is. And I think to the younger generation, kind of to your point, I think they're consuming things differently. I mean, you go to a slightly older generation, they're diehard Broncos fans, and they're coming to watch the Broncos game, and that's what they're all about. Where the younger generation, I mean, we'll see tables of 10 or 12 guys in there with their computers. And they're sitting there open because they're playing their fantasy league, they're executing trades. They're watching five, six, seven different games at the same time and want to track all the data that's coming along with it. So it is definitely different and changing. And I also think the other piece we're seeing as sports content gets distributed differently, it's not just turn on one of the big networks and that game's going to be on. Thursday Night Football's coming through Prime. MLS is coming through Apple, and people start scratching their heads. Well, gosh, where do I watch the game? Well, let's create a place where it doesn't matter how it's coming. You just know we're going to have it. We'll have it on however it's coming in, and that's how we want to engage with all the sports fans across all the sports.
No, it's really cool. It's really cool. And before we get, sort of a deep dive into the business and the growth of it, Denver's had some really cool things going on with, women focused sports bars.
Yeah.
So, when we look at the sporting landscape, not only is our core sports evolving, we have women's sports that are peaking. We have emerging teams and leagues that now are demanding attention. And so I'm curious, thematically, are you guys, touching into all of those, different fan pockets, or do you have a core one that you build around? How do you think about that with so much content going on now?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it is a big part of what we spend a lot of time on. I think, well, on one hand, there's just more games. So, you think about college football. There was a playoff series this year that we didn't have before, or not as long. That's just more games. We also have more sports. So to your point, the tailwinds and the trends behind WNBA was unbelievable. I mean, you see a lot of the media hype, and just speaking practically how we saw it, it was incredible. We just opened in Indianapolis in December of last year. The Fever were selling out every single game for people to come out and watch Caitlin Clark. Last year, the Big Ten championship was Minneapolis. We were right across the street from the stadium where they played in. We did more for the women's Big Ten conference championship than we did for the men's or for some of the other locations for March Madness. I mean, it was really incredible. So engaging with the teams in Mohegan Sun, one of our other locations, the Connecticut Sun play there. Their first game was against the Fever. It was Caitlin Clark's first game. They sold out the casino and the stadium. And so we do live feeds from the Connecticut Sun coaches after the games in our restaurant. So finding ways to just engage with all of those different sports has really
Super
been
cool.
it's really interesting. And it goes back to the pieces I talked about before, just little things on the menu, drinks, whatever it might be, to make sure we're catering to a wider base of sports fan, because it isn't, like I said, the traditional sports bar. It's not a bunch of 21-year-old college students that are coming in to get a cheap bucket of beer. It is a wider range of sports fans, and all those, whether it's women's sports or other just different international sports. Soccer is another big one that we're just starting to tap into. They're on at different times of the day, but if we talk to the fan club or association and say, great, you guys want to come in and watch a game at 9 a.m. on Saturday because that's when it's on in London, we'll open up. So it's a lot of it is, how do you get to you just find those pockets of fans and those fan clubs. And now those times that might typically be dead zones for sports, as you look across the calendar, it's all filling in with all these new events and all these new sports.
Yeah, and sitting from the Profluence lens, there's only more coming, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's what's so exciting, whether it's curling leagues or rodeo
Yeah.
or bobsled. It is every day, every minute of the day, with this global reach now, there is sports, and, especially with the rise of betting, it's driven a new engagement to sports that sometimes we wouldn't really care about. And so
Yeah.
before we go on the expansion side, talk to me.
Yeah.
Betting has become such a prominent piece of the entertainment side of sports. We're watching people bet, real time fantasy, and then more in traditional levers. Are you guys leaning into that side of fandom and promoting it or engaging with it? How do you guys think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's very clear, especially here in Colorado, just as an example, because it was one of the early states to legalize, move that direction. We're now almost used to it, right? Like, people betting on their phone is just commonplace. And we often joke that at our locations, it's one of the few restaurants that it's actually okay to look down at your phone and not pay attention to the other person, because you're checking your stats, you're checking your bets. I think it really just adds a whole different level of engagement. And it's people consumed differently because they're watching differently, right? You're not necessarily just about who's winning or losing. You may have a bet on the spread, or your bets on the number of passing yards, or whatever else it might be. We'll see people staying to the end of the game, still cheering because they're waiting for that last yard or that last point that might break the spread. And people are high fiving. You're like, what are they high fiving? You're cheering about? Like the game isn't over. It's just because they hit some other bet or parlay or some other game. And so we see it as a really cool way that people are engaging with each other. So we're working with all of the different betting platforms, more in just co-marketing, co-promotion, because quite frankly, their users are our users. People that are at Tom's are most likely have placed some bet, and vice versa. All the betting platforms have fans that are coming to our spots. And so it's a great partnership to help people engage across the betting platforms and fantasy leagues as well. So it is, I think, a cool part of engagement, but also part of the entertainment. And then also something that we're going to start doing with loyalty programs and database. How do we lean even further heavy into that with what they call like free to play? So it's making bets to win points that give you loyalty at Tom's, and now you're a VIP and you can reserve a table before anyone else can. So things like that to make it enhance that guest experience to come watch a game at the arena, skip the line for some of the big days, those kinds of things, and make it more entertaining and allow people to bet that are maybe intimidated by the typical betting platforms and don't understand what spreads or money lines or things like that need, but more like the old football the Super Bowl squares and things like that, where you don't even need to know much about the game. Now you just kind of have a vested stake into it, and you pay more attention and jump into the entertainment with the crowd.
And you stay a little bit longer and drink one or two more drinks. We
And
can't
that's
forget
exactly
about that
right.
either, right?
Exactly. Yeah. No, we just came off the heels of March Madness. Another perfect example, right? I mean, that is like our Super Bowl, because people are coming out to watch tons of different games, and they've got bets on tons of different games, and it just enhances that healthy tension you have between teams and the trash talking and all that kind of stuff. It's great.
No, it's really cool. Quick little nugget, because I like to pull them out. I mean, Brooks, you've said it. If you haven't said it once, you've said it 5 times. You guys lean on partnerships, and it's so
Yeah.
neat, whether it's AEG or a betting company. I mean, to have this nucleus and then find really strategically aligned partners, to me, is truly the key to success. And
Yeah.
we see that across the board in this collective lane of building. Now, putting your CEO hat on, as you guys look to continue to grow and scale, and with your prior successes on the PE side of the fence, give us a little insight as to how you survey the rest of the country, the rest of the world. What are some of the mechanics that you look for that says this not only is going to be a thriving location, but a profitable location for Tom's, and what's on the horizon for you there?
Yeah, the good news is the white space is huge, and things like partnerships really do play into it as well, as where you can partner with whatever it is, teams, beverage partners, sports betting, whatever it is, because opening restaurants is risky, and you got to convince people to come out and build awareness. And one of the great things about the partnerships is it allows us to kind of punch outside our weight class with some of the bigger guys to say, great, we'll come take care of your fans. If if the Broncos reach out to all their fans and say, hey, come to Tom's, we're doing a watch party, people are going to pay attention. It's a great way for us to build that initial awareness. And so it opens up the universe for where we can go to a little bit better. The other thing we're seeing is some of the other leagues, like UFC has been a great partner. We actually have a partnership with them where they're helping to promote events at our location. And so we now sell out like every UFC event per month. We sell them out across the country because it's that same sports community wants to come out, and they've helped build awareness for us about we're the place to come watch. The other one too is a lot of, I mentioned on some of the international leagues, like La Liga. We're doing a partnership with Club America right now because they want to find ways to engage with their fans. But if you live here, you can't go to the game. So the next best thing is to come to Tom's. And so it's a way for them to help get their fans together and all of us engaged together. And so partnerships is a big part of it, but a lot of it's just looking around the country to see where sports fans are at. We look at all of the stadium type locations. Think of the LA Lives. Like I said, we just opened in Seattle right next to the Climate Pledge Arena. We've got a location in Pittsburgh right next to PNC and where the Steelers play. And there's a lot of these developments around the country where whether it's the stadium owners or the teams, they may own some land around it or have some vested interest where they just they're drawing the fans in. How do we all work together to make it a great experience outside of just the arena, both before and after the game? And so those are fantastic locations. you mentioned the Battery in Atlanta, where we aren't at, but we're looking at a lot of locations like that. But then we also found it doesn't necessarily need to be next to sports stadiums. It's just where there's lots of people at. So convention centers or areas by convention centers are big because I'm sure you've been to lots of conferences. If the Masters are on, you want to go catch it. You want to go find the local spot where you can pop in and go catch part of the game, right? We've got a great spot in Orlando, right on International Drive by that convention center. And it's a fantastic place where pick your season or pick your sport. You're a tourist in town, whether it's for the convention or you're there to visit Disney, we become the spot for everyone to come watch. The other big piece that's been really big for us recently is casinos, because I'm sure you've been to them. The big old school sports books that are in a lot of casinos, they have these giant, 20, 30,000 square foot sports books, and now people can kind of bet on their phones, so they're not packed with people. You tend to have 4 or 5 guys watching horses and sipping the same Coke they've been drinking for 4 hours. And so what we're trying to help them do is convert it from a sports book into a sports bar that has a sports book. Let's draw people in, let's bring entertainment to the place, and you can still make your bets, but it helps them draw them into the casino. So we see a huge opportunity for the concept just by looking around the country to see where sports fans are at. And then the last thing I'll say is we spent a lot of time looking at the teams and what I call like multi-generational sports fans. So we have a great location in Minneapolis, which was downtown. It was one of our first locations we opened post-COVID, and everyone was a little nervous. What's it going to be like downtown Minneapolis? Are fans coming out? It opened doing like 3 times what we thought it was going to. And I attribute a lot of it to it's just a great Midwestern town where people love their sports teams and really loyal. I say the multi-generational because I was in there once and talking to a couple of guys, and it was grandfather, son, and grandson, all in their Vikings jerseys. And the Vikings playing completely on the other side of town. They came before the game, went to the game, came back after the game. I mean, they're out for that whole experience. And I'm sure your mind can start racing with certain towns that are just great sports towns that people want to come out to and watch their team and really loyal to watching them.
Yeah. Now, it totally resonates. My wheels are spinning. There's one thing I want to touch on real quick before we turn the corner and bring this thing home.
Yeah.
But there is a massive, massive bullseye on youth sports right now. And so
Yeah.
we have a lot of these multi-sport facilities that live outside of city centers. And so they may be more in SEC country, or they may be in the outskirts of a Tucson, right? Or in LA, but they're lacking the entertainment portion of this. Like, are you guys trying to sort of like triangulate that as well and sort of work with some of these like tier 2, tier 3 markets, but that still have that big foot traffic? Like, how do you guys think about that?
It's interesting. Really a good question. And it is something we were absolutely looking at. I would say, honestly, there's so much opportunity in front of us with some of the other places I've been talking about. We just haven't got to some of them yet.
Sure.
But it's why I say, the white space is huge because there's sports fans everywhere. But the beauty of those kinds of markets is, if you're in downtown Denver or Pittsburgh or whatever, there might be 4 or 5 other places for you to go watch the game. We think we bring something better and we do great. In some of these other markets, your alternatives are limited, and we can come be the new shiny thing and the new place to get together, and you become the hub of everything sports. And so I think it's a huge opportunity for us. It's just, quite frankly, we see more opportunity than we can go tackle right now.
What a cool place to be in, man. I mean,
Yeah,
that is,
that's right.
I mean, it presents its own challenges, but, I think that is a constant theme as we bring in CEOs in the sporting landscape, staying maniacally focused to protecting the mission, not trying to be everything to everybody, and going and running our race. And so, Brooks, as we look into the rest of 2025, give the listeners a little nugget. What has you most excited on the roadmap that we can be on the lookout for?
Yeah, so I'll talk about a couple of things. One, we got some really exciting growth, which I'll touch on. I think the other part is as we scale the business, what I'm finding is this is much less about a traditional restaurant business where you say, great, here's my model, here's my template, I'm just going to keep stamping them out. And you can think of any other restaurant company like that. We're not formulaic with how we build this. We fit it to what we think people want in that market. Our Seattle location is like 20,000 square feet. We've got a location in a casino that's 4,000 square feet, and everything in between. And that's all to say, what we're realizing is this isn't just about stamping out a number of locations. It's about how do we increase the fan base that we're engaging with. And so we like to often talk about the number of sports fans that come through our door. And so this year we'll have between 3.5 and 4 million sports fans come through our door. Next year we'll be at about 5 to 6 million. And it starts to completely change the frame that we look at our business, because it's not just about what are the sales you had this week versus last year? How did you do for Tuesday on lunch versus, Saturday? It's really about how many sports fans did we bring in over the course of the year? How did we engage with them? What did we learn about them? And they're sitting there for 2 hours plus watching a game. We can put whatever we want on the screens, whether that's other different stats or entertainment or other games we can play. We're creating something that's really fundamentally different from just a sports bar. We're a venue to bring together this community of sports fans that's growing and growing. And our goal is to get, within 5 years, we see a pretty clear path to like 100 locations. But even more interestingly, that's 17 to 20 million sports fans coming through the door every year into a Tom's. Think about the NBA. That's like the total attendance of the entire NBA for this whole season. And all of a sudden, you got a really different business. And we've got a huge fan base of active users of sports fans. And how do we continue to engage with them? And what else do we do with that business? So it's really exciting with what we're trying to build. And so to that end, we're growing. We'll have about 8 more locations this year, which will bring us to about 20, 21 by the end of the year. We're going to open another 10, so we'll be roughly 30 locations by the end of 26. And that's kind of our model, just kind of keep growing these locations in new areas where we see the sports fans going. And then as part of that, continue to build that user base of fans, but then also continue to work with the teams, the leagues, the partners, all those people to really bring together that whole sports ecosystem around sports fans.
That is music to our ears, Brooks. And I
Yeah.
think like as we continue to grow and this space continues to grow, we want to belong to something bigger than ourselves. And so Tom's may serve as a sports bar now, but you post this conversation and engaging with it. I mean, it turns into a lifestyle brand. It turns into the same way that some of these other restaurants have coined. It's not just a place where you go eat. It's a spot where we hang out, and this is where you make memories. And I think that's, as humans, what we want in our life. It's just so neat to hear from your lips, what you guys are doing, where you're going. I'd be remiss without asking this final question, that we're talking about sports bars all day. Brooks, who do you got winning the Masters, man?
Oh, geez. What's funny? People often ask, like, who's your team? Who's going to win March Madness? Who's going to win the Masters? What we often say is, I don't care who wins. I just want it to go 7 games. I want it to be within one shot, come down to the last putt on the 18th hole. I don't care who it is. You just want everybody stuck in their seats, engaged till the very last second. So, I'm not sure who I necessarily would pick. All I care is that it's really close right up to the bitter end.
And this guy's been media trained. That is a politically correct answer, Brooks. I'm going to stamp Will Zalatoris, and I'll put it for both of us, man.
Perfect.
I hope Willie Z takes it home. But nonetheless, man, what a insightful conversation. I appreciate you taking time with us and giving us an insight into what you're building. Brooks, if our listeners want to engage or figure out where the closest Tom's is to them, best way to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, tomswatchbar.com is our website link, has the connection to all the different locations. And then we're on all the social channels to see what's going on location by location, because as you can imagine, everyone's different, and what we're promoting is really different because the sports in each town are different. So come check us out. We'd love to see you.
I love it, man. Well, on behalf of Profluence, thank you for everything you're doing for the sporting ecosystem. If you haven't been to a Tom's Watch Bar, change that, go make it happen. And Brooks, we'll check in with you here soon and we'll get a recap.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Really appreciate it.
Talk
Take
soon,
care.
guys.